and even to the ideals of democracy. Because if I am a Democrat, I believe in the values and the ideals of democracy. If you leave your state there, you are my neighbor, you do wrong things, even if we are brothers or what, I must call you out. I have a duty to call you out. Because you are violating the values. You are violating the values that, you're violating the values that I hold dear. To say, no, this is not how you run things. That's ultimately what it should boil down to. But no, we have gangsters here. We're being led by gangsters here who are more loyal to the gang than to anything else.
So, and now, it makes me think about this also rise of new African leaders. Some through coups, some recently we saw in Senegal through elections, who seem to provide some kind of potential for a progressive type of stance on the continent, because if I'm to be honest with you, a lot of the politicians, and I know it's not an age type of related thing, it's a matter of what your political position is, but truly a lot of the politicians in Africa are old, and truly a lot of them are regressive in their thinking and approach to politics. So, oftentimes when you say new African leaders or young African leaders, it's sort of an antithesis to the status quo, which is, these old folks who are from the liberation age. And one almost gets a sense that maybe you need a new direction, you need, not on the basis of your youth, but yes, we need young people who have the right vision for the continent, because, and one of the things we need to really insist on for our generation of leaders is that issue of accountability, man. Because, I like the EFF, for example. I don't know how true it is what Andile keeps saying about this Sankara oath. I don't know if this is a story he made up or it's actually a real thing. That in the EFF he suggested the Sankara oath and they removed it, which was supposed to ultimately ensure that they are connected to their people, basically, at the very least by force, if anything, So, but it's difficult to now look at a supposedly left-leaning organization now, seemingly with a leadership that wants to enjoy the perks of that elite lifestyle. That I don't want to be bound to have to use public facilities. No, I would like something better for myself and my children.
But I think the true test, adding on to the EFF thing, for me, I think the true test of leftist and socialist party would be not necessarily, although the Sankara oath is important, for me it's not everything in the sense that if the EFF were to govern tomorrow, where I will judge whether they're genuine is what they will do with the two-tier health system, the two-tier school system. Because think about it, Andile's argument hinges on these two things, for example, because that's what the Sankara oath insists on. So if you are going to insist on having a two-tier health system, then it means you're not genuine. So you have to end the two-tier health system. And if you've ended the two-tier health system, it means there's only one public health system in the country. There's no one for the rich and one for the poor. And it means the politicians and the public representatives as well are going to be forced to use the one system that we have. Then ultimately, you can trust that these people are true proponents of whatever rhetoric they've been spewing all this time. But if you leave them like that, then you're telling me that, because you can afford, because of the perks from the state, I'm going to be subjected to the public ones, which are usually under funded and under-resourced, and then you on the other hand are going to go to continue doing what you've been doing. So for me, that's why that whole argument, although I hear it, although it's valid, it's not a determining factor for me to whether to vote the EFF or not. Because I'm like, okay, it's fine, let's give them power and we'll see. Because now it's at the level of accusations and rhetoric and whatever, and we don't know. So as far as I know, EFF has been very vocal around this two-tier public or two-tier school systems and all that. They have to end private education. We must have one education in the country. We must have one health system in the country. Then we'll know we're being led by true socialists here.
We will see how that all goes. You know, I now take a wait and see approach in terms of, you know, you'll show me what you're about.
Yeah, I think ultimately, my brother, that it's only at the level of praxis that we can seriously judge you on. Now, not to say that before then we cannot question how you move. We can. I mean, there's a lot you can criticize the EFF on. There's a lot, and for me, I'm not against. I think critique is important. There's a difference, you know, between criticism and critique. Yeah, criticism usually comes from detractors and enemies, but critique usually comes from those ones who love you and they want you to be better.
Yeah, no, certainly, you know. So, I mean, obviously for me, you know, I come from the Pan-African orientation, you know, and not as a recent thing because it's in fashion, you know. Like we've been Pan-Africanists, you know.
You're not Mafigizol.
Yeah, we've been around, man. Like, I mean, the true sort of ideologies that hooked me in my introduction to politics was Pan-Africanism and Black consciousness. You know, that was the true buffets I was eating. You understand? So there is no, I've never been schooled in the politics of right wing or anything else. You understand? Or libertarianism or any of some kind of fallout between myself and the folks at PASMA. I was talking to one of the brothers. It sounded like they wanted to take ownership of Pan-Africanism, and I was man, with my respect for this man over here,
Mangalis,
you know, Mangalis, respectfully, but you know, he does not own Pan-Africanism. You know, he's a crucial figure. You know,
yeah, it precedes him.
Yeah, he's a crucial figure, but he's not, you saw, the be all and end all of Pan-Africanism. And I was trying to, in a humble way, say to them, I understand Pan-Africanism globally. You know, I think I'm not a local Pan-Africanist that is focused on a specific personality. I deal with Pan-Africanism globally, which is what it is. You can't deal with it any other way, you know? And so I have a global view of Pan-Africanism, and Sobukwe is one of the key, you know, figures there, and very prominent. You know, we're not dimming his light in any way, but for you to fail to acknowledge a fellow Pan-Africanist who may not be in your organization, you know, you can't even find an aligning of values and cooperate with another Pan-Africanist because you feel your particular expression of the idea has to take dominance. And you see, these are some of the issues that come up between us, you know, how in our own spaces we are contesting with each other, you know, and then it gives rise to that thing that Andile talks about, the horizontal versus the vertical sort of contradiction. you know, the main contradiction, primary contradiction, and the secondary contradiction, you know, that, and that's how you could sort of help yourself understand these things. But it's kind of difficult in terms of political rhetoric. So there's a lot being said these days, and I think people end up flooded with a lot of information, and they don't know what positions to take.
Yeah,
Especially our people, black people,
absolutely, absolutely.
very politically confused much of the time.
Our problem is we all want to be leaders. We all want to be led. Like that's why we have many what I call them political startups.
Yeah.
I call them political startups. Everyone. Like me and you can go to IEC tomorrow with a name and register. Because we also want to lead. No one
do want to.
Yeah, no one must lead us. We are also capable.
So that's another topic we have to talk about. But I want us to wrap this up, and I see we've gone even beyond the time we thought we would take on this. But I want us to just quickly finish up, you know, because this other point speaks to everything in terms of how we position ourselves geopolitically. So the resurgence of global right-wing element, you know, and just to sort of frame, you know, what I was thinking about in terms of that is, I alluded in the previous video that it seems as though the right wing has arisen because there's some sense of feeling in the right wing that the left is too dominant and has been so for too long. So now it is our turn to come back and restore white supremacy and just straight up go full white supremacist imperial, you know, and just take back control because you know, what we can then use as a rationale is to say, you see, there's too much chaos and disorder in society because of, you know, left-wing policies. So, you know, so now, you know, I talk about this because I know that obviously the right wing, its strongholds are in Europe, you know, Europe, America, and other places like that. But you find that those elements end up influencing the thinking that ends up on our shores. So now, for example, I'll give you an example. So when you look at sort of the right-wing talking points, especially as it relates to colonialism, there is a lot of desire to absolve whiteness from the stain of colonialism in their history. You know, there's this desire to absolve, lessen the impact, you know, and especially through the use of black voices sometimes, to try and make colonialism, slavery, and the African Holocaust not as brutal as it was, to make it look like it's not as bad as you guys think. So these are the right-wing talking points. Yeah. So if you are familiar with your Douglas Murrays and all of these guys who are really cultural warriors for the West, you know, these are the guys who straight up stand up and say the West is the best because of this and this and this. We have civilized the world, and this is just the truth. You know, it's not politically correct, but it's the truth. So they always use the guise of it's just the truth to say some crazy. They always say some of the most ridiculous, crazy stuff. So if you're looking at those guys, you know, and then you think about Helen Zille, the time she made those comments about colonialism. You know, it was also my understanding, and as I listened to Musi telling the story, Helen Zille had contact, I think, with these elements at some point, and I guess she was so inspired in those right-wing workshops that she just came out and came on Twitter. You know what, guys? Actually, you guys always complain here about colonialism. I mean,
wasn't
guys,
that
colonialism brought development, guys.
brought civilization.
Really, it's like she was just coming out of the right-wing conference, where they had all been saying, yeah, these people, they're always talking about being oppressed here, yeah, and Helen was like, yeah, man, oh, man, you're actually right, man. And I must actually tell the ones in my country, the blacks in my country. I don't know you guys in the UK and the US, how you are dealing with it. But hey, the blacks in my country are very problematic. No, man, let me tell them. No, let me tell them. It's true. No, you guys always here complaining colonialism. Broad development here and infrastructure. Wow. So I always look at that yeah, she became very strong and emboldened. Obviously, she's always been a racist, but she became emboldened with this new resurgence of right-wing elements that are creating the platforms that enable these guys to have the freedom to just say all the crazy things, the racist things, the anti-black things. And then they say, no, but it's freedom of speech, guys. Wow, Kanti, you only want to be the ones who have freedom of speech. We you know what I'm saying? So, I don't know what you think about that, because there's another story before you come in. Another story that I also thought about in this context was, you remember Eric Prince, ne? Not too long ago, Blackwater guy, Eric Prince, the guy from the mercenary from the US who said, you know what, we must just, as the US, we must just put on back our imperial hat and just go back to Africa and colonize because, to bring back order. You didn't hear that?
I missed that one. No, I don't.
Look into it, Poso. Eric Prince says
Eric Prince.
Eric Prince. This is an American mercenary guy. He's in the American military industrial complex. Basically, he's the guy who gets paid to get the contract to go into countries like Iraq, and other places on behalf of the US to do their work, their bidding, and he gets paid handsomely for it. So obviously, a guy like this could say crazy stuff like this.
Crazy stuff like that.
He's a cowboy. You know what I'm saying? He's a wild west cowboy type of He's like Donald Trump. They just talk. These guys. Racism and white supremacy. They're in the natural scene. They don't try too hard to be politically correct. So yeah, I don't know what you think in terms of that interplay, between like the right wing globally and how it affects our local context, and those examples to take into account.
You know what I think? There's something interesting that Andile Mutama says in one of his articles when he was talking about anti-black racism. He says that it's actually when whiteness is at its most vulnerable, where its anti-black racism actually glares and where it comes out because it's vulnerable. So for an example, just to give you a typical example, when certain white people will call you and I am monkey or a kafir or all that, it's usually when their whiteness is actually vulnerable at the time. They don't feel as special as white supremacy has managed to make them believe they are. And they're actually vulnerable at that point in time. Broadly speaking, with this question of the rise of right-wing elements, especially in the West, and just how they are trying to trivialize the devastating impact of colonialism, transatlantic slavery, neocolonialism today, and just the evil that the West has done, particularly in Africa and globally. It is because I'm saying that cannot be divorced from the vulnerability in the West at the moment, and the fact that the West is inexorably on a decline, and their decline cannot be stopped. So I think if we look at it at that level, everything starts to make sense. The West is at its most vulnerable state it has ever been since the dawn of modernity, 500, 600 years ago. And the scales are changing. Its former colonies are now on the rise. Those that they deemed less humans are now on the rise. Those whose humanity they questioned, those whom they enslaved, are now on the rise. And what's the common, what's the usual response from a guilty historical racist? Of course, it's to try and repackage and repeat the very same racist ideas that actually led them to commit their crimes in the first place, or to try and actually trivialize them, as we see happening. So I think the rise of that's how I see the rise of right-wing rhetoric is coming from the West, even from Zila. Zila sees that, especially, with Zila, you should also now, when you localize what's happening, that the aftermath of Fees Must Fall and the reintroduction into national consciousness of questions such as decolonization, putting those questions of decoloniality back into the national consciousness, at the center of the national consciousness. Of course, races like Zila will have to defend colonialism and how they got here in the first place, because they are losing the hold that they've had. They're losing they're essentially being exposed. So hence they react like this. And Toni Morrison says that the very function of racism is to distract you. They say you don't have history, you're going to be distracted and go and show them that you have history. They say you don't have culture, you are going to be distracted and you're going to show that you have culture. You have language, you say, so it's to distract you. And I don't think we should be distracted, because essentially they're distracting us, these guys, from trying to do something from this whole, I think we've been given a window where we can make some changes. And the best way that they're doing is, so this is distraction. They're distracting us. Because they say, well, you're not a human being. You don't have a history. You didn't have civilization. And then we go, we had Carthage. We had Nubia. We had what?
Yeah. And so now, because you have limited energy, limited attention, limited resources, you're not able to focus on what you should be focusing on. We should be sitting and planning about how we're going to assert our dominance, and forget about whether someone thinks we are monkeys, we are subhuman, we are this, we are that. As far as I'm concerned, if you're saying I'm a monkey, it's fine. I want to be a monkey that dominates the terrain. And I want to be a monkey that you have no choice but to freaking respect.
But as you are being distracted.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
As you are being distracted. And I always say, when someone calls you a monkey, you can call them a monkey back. When you call me a monkey, I can say you're a monkey. I can even say you're a pig. But if you have the power to subject me to monkey conditions, if I don't have that power back, I can't do anything.
Exactly.
And what I mean by
Except
that, what I mean by that statement is that if they're calling us monkeys, we should call the monkeys back while we're trying to regain power.
Exactly. So we're not distracted again.
So,
like
so that we're not distracted. So let's focus on power. Let's focus on getting back our land. Let's focus on things that matter. Because it doesn't matter if they think we're monkeys. They're not going, fine, we want to be monkeys that own the land. It's okay.
Exactly. It's cool. It's all good. So, Puso, on that, as you're talking, something comes back to my mind. The fragmentation of the black vote through many different devices. I mean, the black vote has been so splintered because realistically, this thing was supposed to be. I mean, I know that if it was just Andile's wish, it would just be that since initially, I'm talking about Andile Mnetama now. I'm sure for him, it's just like, because initially, while we had our own particular territorial tussles among ourselves, no one rose to the level where they decided they are going to dominate everyone else, like the Europeans did, the British and the Afrikaner. So they then took land. They come, first of all, as aliens from a different continent. They come in, they occupy, and they colonize and so on and so on. So now, I'm sure for Andile, it's like, this was done to the Africans who were here. Obviously, politically, you would think, okay, these Africans who this happened to will form one bloc. And then in that one bloc, all of us will make sure that we secure our interests, all of us, that we'll be able to agree to say, okay, guys, no matter our few differences, problems, whatever, in terms of securing our interests, all of us, we can do that. I'm sure Andile just looks like I'm sure him, like me, looks at that parliament with all of the black people and a few white people making political moves that are going to benefit African people. Like the splintering of the black vote is perhaps a phenomenon that needs a focus on its own. Like it's a topic on its own.
You know what? It shouldn't shock us. It shouldn't shock us, the fragmentation of the black vote. For me, how it makes sense for me is just to go back to Biko's essay, the fragmentation of black resistance. It's one and the same thing. Just as during apartheid, black resistance was fragmented through ethnic lines in the creation of Bantustans, which essentially were along language lines and cultural lines. Today, the fragmentation of black resistance is being done through different political parties. It's the same thing. And when you look at that, you'll understand that different historical epoch in the country, same modus operandi.
Yeah.
So Ubiko writes about it. The fragmentation of that's the title of the essay. I write what I like. The fragmentation of black resistance. Today, what do we have?
Exactly.
The fragmentation of black votes, which in a way can be construed as the fragmentation of black resistance anyway, if we see the vote as another way of resisting.
Because this black is what was achieved more than, it was a big outcome, right, of the struggle. It was one of the key outcomes, and so it becomes a tool because, hey, if anything, as an average just black person, that's really the power I have. If for the majority anyway, this is the power you have. To at least say you can go put your mark there, and it can mean something. It can count to something. So, you can't be laissez-faire about how you use that thing, because And the Oppenheimers can give money to political parties. You can vote. You know what I'm saying? That's it. You can vote and protest. The Oppenheimers can give and withdraw resources.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's how this thing kind of works. So
Yeah.
we can't take the vote so lightly. You know, it's one of the things that we have at our disposal, and unfortunately, we have not been able to use it strategically. You know, I mean, I really just think about how one could use the vote in different ways, but I don't want us to get into the details of that too much today.
Yeah, my
But
brother,
I think
I'm late. Eh?
Yeah, you are late. You are late. We have to let you go. But I think we've spoken mostly about most of the things we wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
Let's call it a day.
The only thing we didn't touch about in the 3 pillars you raised was the red pill, which I think we can talk about it next time.
Yeah, we must come back for it. The red pill Nayo needs time on its own. It's special. It's special, that one. So yeah, man, thanks for coming through. We'll chat next time.
No, thank you for inviting me. I enjoyed this chat. I needed it.
Sure. Let's do it again soon.
Yeah, no, definitely. We'll talk.
Anytime.
Thanks.